Welcome back. If you're just joining us, you're watching Sunday Edition, Kenya's premier Sunday morning political show here on KTN News. We are speaking about a myriad of issues, politics. We're also speaking about the IEBC's preparedness for the election. And one thing that has been making headlines over the past couple of days is a tender for election technology. The Kenya Integrated Election Management System, KIEMS, whose tender was cancelled by the IEBC, but now the IEBC has chosen to single source for that. Sanfran is a beneficiary. Here is our managing editor, Joe Aguirre, with a look at that earlier in the week.
With just 136 days to go before the August general election, the IEBC commissioners walked in with an assurance to the country.
The Commission will use the Kenya Integrated Election Management System, commonly referred to as KIEMS, for the August 8th general election as provided by the law.
This after the Commission earlier in the week cancelled a tender for the installation of that exact system by a French company, Gemalto SA, citing inadequate time and what the Commission called inflated costs. But now the Commission says it has a way out: single sourcing.
The Commission has taken steps to directly procure the required Kenya Integrated Elections Management System from Safran Identity and Security Company, formerly known as MOFO.
Safran, also a French company, supplied the BVR kits in the 2013 general election, the same kits used in the just concluded mass voter registration. IEBC says it will be much easier to integrate the data from all the 19 million registered voters into the identification system if the same service provider is used.
Safran has undertaken to deliver the technology within the statutory timelines which the Commission has issued.
It is not clear how much the direct procurement will cost the country. But in the last general election, the Auditor General's report suggested that the government had lost nearly 4 billion shillings from a similar arrangement involving the same company, which was then called Safran Mofo. Safran had initially won the tender but was disqualified under unclear circumstances, only to resurface as the service provider after the government announced that it was resorting to direct procurement from the government of Canada.
And the Canadians had no stake in that company. So they say, we are doing government to government, but when it comes to the contract and the business of elections, you got to talk to them directly. And this company, Canadian company, was just an agent of a French company. So even what we had to pay to the Canadian company was a lot more than we anticipated.
The IEBC says this is the only way to go, but with controversies around the direct procurement in the last general election, it will have work to do in convincing any doubting Thomases out there that this time it was above board, that it is value for money, and that in fact the technology will work on August 8th. Joageo, KTN News.
But we'll come back to finish that conversation and take it a notch higher and talk about the IEBC's preparedness for the election. But for now, let's take you to the county of Mombasa, where NASA are expected to hold a rally at the Tononoka grounds later this afternoon. Right now, the party leader of the Orange Democratic Movement, NASA principal, is addressing the press in Mombasa. Let's listen in.
Port infrastructure and other capacity building and community development initiatives. Loans are usually sought for specific projects. This particular one appears to be looking around for something to finance as long as the port is delivered. It is a case study in avoiding accountability for money disbursed. It can later be claimed to finance anything and everything. Can Mr. President explain whether Kenya sought a loan from the United Arab Emirates and what we needed the loan for? Can he explain to Kenyans the terms of repayment for this so-called loan? Can the President explain to Kenyans how the Dubai loan, if at all it is a loan and not a bribe, is a better deal than what we would get from other institutions like the World Bank or other nations? Why did it come just when the United Arab Emirates was seeking to manage our port? The second container terminal was funded and built by the government of Japan. Having funded and built the project, Japan had realistic expectations that it will be given the chance to manage and operate it. That is just common sense. Can President Kenyatta explain to Kenyans?
ODM party leader Raila Odinga, they of course are addressing the media ahead of the rally by the National Super Alliance later this afternoon. We shall be covering that for you live. Francis Ntomwa is keeping an eye on things for that, and Nasser Ali Tonoka for us here at KTN News. Let's continue with our discussion, and we were just setting the pace for the IEBC's preparedness for the elections. We have seen all the intrigues. We have seen a lot of reactions. We did even at the Madare at the Huruma Sports Grounds earlier in the week on Thursday when NASA were addressing their rally. Kalonzo Musyoka did speak about the issue. Even, of course, the NASA principals, punching holes into the IEBC's preparedness for the elections, saying that NASA will be having their own tallying center. Let's listen to what Kalonzo had to say.
Sisi wana NASA tutakuwa na presidential tallying center, na sisi tutakuwa na hiyo biometric yetu sisi wenyewe. Hii imefanyika juzi upande wa Ghana. Wananielewa hiyo? Umoja wakati tukiimba wakati wa mabadiliko ni sasa.
The chairman Chebukati did come out and say that IEBC is the only institution mandated to be having tallying for the presidential election. Jubilee have also been speaking about the same. Let's listen to the Deputy President.
IEBC wale waliokuweko wamefukuzwa, wengine wameteuliwa. Sasa hata kazi ya hawa wa kuteuliwa ya kuhesabu kura hawataki ifanywe na IEBC, wanataka kuhesabu kura wenyewe, kwa sababu wamejua ya kwamba hawana kura, hawawezi kuomba kura kwa wananchi kwa sababu wamechanganyikiwa.
That would be the surest way to trigger post-election violence in the Republic of Kenya. Na waomba siku ya leo nikiwa hapa Baringo ya kwamba allow our institutions mandated by the law to do their work.
All right, a lot of reactions on the IEBC thing. Washington, the CS there seems to be in full campaign regalia.
He's doing the government. A water project, right? I do not understand the context of that entire speech, so I will not purport to make comments on it.
All right, let's talk about IEBC. Dismas, are we ready for the elections?
When you look at...
It's at the bottom end of our screen, 134 days to the elections, and we are doing this. Do you think where all systems go?
Maybe when you look at it in context, before IEBC could even start preparing for this election, the then CORD were on the streets demanding some major reviews, right, which has been done with success, and now you have a new commission. And the commission has been coming up trying to make all manner of decisions, and obviously a number of people in society have rejected those decisions, and they've gone to the High Court. So the commission is working under very, very difficult circumstances, trying to make everybody happy. And we know that's a nightmare. But I think for me it's important for Jubilee, if they smell a rat at IEBC, to shout, and for NASA, if they smell a rat at Jubilee, to shout, and indeed every other Kenya, because we want at the end of the day to have a free, fair, and a credible election. Last Friday, I listened to one of the commissioners, Dr. Rosalind Akombe, and the kind of information she gave was very reassuring, because she said that the commission is actually doing so much, but the biggest challenge to date has been communication. They're not able to tell us what they're doing. Like, for instance, if you go to their website, they say they're training 400 personnel on how to run this election under the new regulation. Had that information been made public, then people would begin to develop confidence. And then there's the new law, which imposes an individual criminal responsibility for every person working at IEBC, either as a commissioner or a staffer, or even as a contractor. If you do any mistake, unlike in the past where you do a mistake and then it's a corporate responsibility, that it's the organization which is sued, now there'll be individual criminal responsibility. And that's something which that we need to applaud them. And of course now the key issue of saffron. In as much, again, as they had issues in Nigeria, probably that has been sorted out, and we need to see today how are they going to manage this. And that's where that team comes in, the advisory committee, to guarantee to us that everything is working. And for somebody to keep on complaining, like I've seen the Deputy President and the CS for Water claiming that we are not supposed to be taking IBC to court, I think that's the wrong way to look at it. We've got the High Court, and if anybody smells a rat, you have to run. You better run to the High Court today and complain than wait for the outcome of an election. If it's not free and fair, then you start saying that I wish I knew.
Let me come to Jared. And we did see in the run-up to the 2013 election, there was the same kind of push and pull with the electoral body. It was about the, procuring the BVR kits, and IEBC was complaining about having so much political interference such that they did not have enough time, to train their clerks on how to use the technology and all that. We're having the same kind of thing on the technology that is supposed to address the issues that came up in 2013 elections. What do you think having a deja vu moment again?
Well, sadly, we never learn from history, and that is why CORD or NASA as a coalition has consistently asked the levels of preparedness by IEBC to conduct the next calls. You're right to say that 2013, just because of that kind of, disorganization, we ended up paying 38 billion shillings, where in actual sense we ought to have spent 34 billion shillings for the elections. So certain delays are also become very expensive on the taxpayer. But, Saffron has been given the mandate now to do what they ought to do in terms of, procuring of election materials. The law is very clear under Section 18 of the newly repealed Elections Act that 120 days before the general election, all electronic materials ought to be in place. And that will be ending on the 8th of April. Now, whether Saffron will have the capacity to deliver on the 8th of April is something that we are yet to see. But I also tend to think that perhaps IEBC had engaged Saffron much earlier, and they had reached several agreements only to then, tell Kenyans that we are entering into a direct contract. Because the levels of confidence they try to exhibit while talking about Saffron is so high that there leaves a lot of questions to be desired. But again, you remember that one fundamental question that they constantly pass by is how much they are going to spend to procure these election materials. They're only saying that it is in line with what has been allocated to them by the government. They're not saying how much. But again, are you going to spend the amount that has been allocated, or you are going to have value for the Kenyan money?
All right.
So those are fundamental questions that we have to ask as we go forward.
Yes, maybe to add to what my colleague have said, is that this integrated election management system, from the IT point of view, this is a system that has got backup. So what was passed in Parliament, at my first point, we should do away with the manual backup, because this is integrated system. In IT language, an integrated system, it has an input, execution, processing part, and the backup system. And then to add on that, also what NASA we have done, we are going to come up with our Tallying Center. The reason is in 2013, Jubilee accused NASA we are analog. And things are now changing. In my mother tongue, we say, Vindubi chenjanga. Things are now changing. So now things are changing. NASA, we are coming to go digital, while Jubilee are becoming analog. And the reason is this. We want to have our tallying system simply because we want to produce the exact result to the Kenyans. And as we have our tallying system, it will also be an integrated system. So what we are telling Kenyan is this, and what Jubilee are worried, they are worried for nothing. If as a senatorial aspirant of Nairobi, I get 20,000 in Kibra, our tallying system will read Chapia Chapia has got 20,000 votes in Kibra. And the IEBC tallying system will also read Chapia Chapia had got 20,000 votes.
So the IEBC, Kalonzo did talk about that in Mathare on Thursday, and then the IEBC responded saying they're the only institution mandated to have a tallying center. What do you say to that?
What I will say to that is that we are in a global village, and we are being managed by media, the social media. And being in a global village, we have a right as an IT experts or as a digital government in waiting to come up with a system to check on the government. That is the work of the NASA. We are taking
sorry,
on
Ben,
the
to cut you short. In 2013, Jubilee had a parallel tallying center at Brookhouse School, where results were firstly going to be doctored and to be changed before they ended up at Bomas. Now, because NASA is saying we are also carrying out a parallel tallying system, and the parallel does not necessarily mean we shall be announcing results. We understand that is the purview of IEBC. So what we are saying is when elections are announced at a polling center, that figure will come straight to our tallying center. And even before it ends up at the IEBC, because commonly IEBC tends to delay certain polling stations from their strongholds in order that they have a leverage of topping up.
Whose strongholds?
Jubilee's stronghold. Yeah, Jubilee's stronghold.
All right. Let's hear Washington. I mean, a lot of it has been said. Then I'll come to you.
First, as a government, the Jubilee administration has a responsibility to deliver these elections. Yeah.
Not IEBC.
We all say...
Jubilee or IEBC?
Listen, the truth is...
We are all stakeholders in this election.
The truth is, we say IEBC has responsibilities and everything, but if something were to go wrong on 8th of August, nobody's going to be blaming IEBC. People are going to say Jubilee messed up the election. If there wasn't enough money, people will say the Jubilee Parliament did not give enough money for elections to be carried out. The government, the administration of the day, has a responsibility to create an environment where IEBC can actually do its work. And since nobody in opposition seems to be interested in the independence of IEBC, we will defend that independence. Whenever accusations are made against IEBC that have no merit, which is what CORD has been doing all this while. The truth is, the old commission had put in place mechanisms to prepare the country for a proper election. We spent the last 3 years fighting it, that they actually didn't put anything in place, meaningful in place to hold these elections. Now we find ourselves with a commission that is hardly a few months old, trying to hold an election in another 130 days, and we are putting roadblocks at every instance, at every junction with everything that they do. In my opinion, like I said earlier, I don't think election technology should be open procured, especially with such limited time. Tendering takes forever, at least 6 months to actually get up with something. IEBC, Saffron makes sense for me because we have used their technology before.
And failed.
Yeah, we've used their technology before. The 19 million registered voters we have been registered using Saffron technology. With the limited time we have, it makes sense that you go to the person that has done 3/4 of the work that you should have done by that time to help you integrate the system, especially if they have history, to do it, and they have.
You're saying and failed. So you don't agree with Saffron procuring that technology?
I agree with Saffron procuring that technology, but I want to rectify. We used it in 2013, and we terribly failed 95%.
The problem
so this time round...
But I thought this thing has been litigated over and over.
This time round, let's have them, and when we come to execution part, let all the stakeholders, particularly the political parties...
But we have that. That is why we have the advisory committee.
That execution.
We have a technical advisory committee to do this for all the stakeholders. The law is very clear that this technology must be deployed and tested at least 60 days to elections. The procurement is already done. Hopefully, by 7th, we'll be having... The law doesn't say that the materials must be here.
I would agree.
The law says...
I would agree to this extent that the last elections, evids were for identification was provided for by a different company.
Yes, it was
and BVR were also procured from a different company. So what they're trying to do now is to have both from one source so that there's levels of compatibility. But I hope that will address this problem once and for all.
All right. That's the point I wanted to buttress, that we've been using technology provided by Saffron, and then where you need to blame the old constitution, or rather the old commission, they knew that we had the technology provided by Saffron. So why did they go the extra mile to get another technology from Festec? obviously that was by design to make sure that the technology fails. So I think it's probably it's character assassination to say that saffron technology failed last time. It's the issue of managing those two technologies. And when you come to the tallying centers, there's nothing wrong in every Kenyan having his tallying center at his bedroom and comparing results, provided it's only for internal use. The only person who can declare that election is IBC. So if the NASA guys are hoping that they're going to use that information for public use, then they must be warned very well in advance that it's unacceptable.
And that is what they keep telling their supporters whenever they go for these rallies. That this time we are doing our own tallying, Jubilee will not cheat us, we will be having the results, we will tell you these results. It is not the responsibility. The truth is, every agent at the polling station, is given a copy, is required to be given a copy. It's not practice, but it's required to be given a copy of the results. They sign the results and they're given a copy of those results. If the party, with its mechanism, decided that they wanted to know what those results are, that they need to communicate with their agents in the field. Probably going to have around 55,000 polling stations. If they want to communicate, put a system to communicate with their people, let them communicate. But let them not use this on a public forum. Because people will be expecting, they'll be like, ile result NASA walitupea. That is the actual result. The only person with the legal authority to declare results in this country is IBC.
All right.
Let's
actually, Ben, anybody declaring those results, that's illegal.
Yeah,
and
it is
10
illegal.
years in jail or a fine of 10 million.
Yeah,
every candidate in any election would always have a parallel tallying structure.
Yes, but the question here we're asking, the question Washington is asking in Dismas is this: what are you going to use that data for? Are you going to declare it publicly?
What we are going to do, and it has been done in other countries, firstly, is to do a comparison with what IBC is declaring at Bomas or wherever. So that is very key.
And if you
Secondly,
don't agree with it?
If it doesn't agree with it, we let the public know that somebody is cooking figures.
No, but that is where the problem is.
Who is to determine who is cooking figures? Ben, what if you're the ones cooking figures?
Ben, that is where the problem is. Yeah?
There are forms that are filled at the polling station. Right. There's Form 35 and there's Form 38 that touches on presidential elections. If Form 35 that has been declared at the polling station is not in sync with the declaration at Bomas or wherever, that is a recipe for...
but this is where the problem is, Ben. That is exactly
right,
what happened
let me give him time.
in
you
the 2013.
Yes. Twice the number of times.
Ben, yes. The reason you get a copy of that result is so that you can use it to confront the commission official. That you have, should you have a disagreement. NASA does not have those intentions. At Bomas, when results come, when the Form 35s come, from the counties, the presidential tally, they come there are agents. You are required to have a presidential super agents and other agents for the party, the presidential candidate, to actually look at the results, and sign that form and accept that those results are there. If you have a problem or a dispute with the result, the forum to address this is not a press conference. It's not a rally. You are not even supposed to prepare your supporters for that eventuality. You should use the information you have to confront the election officials on the floor, in that room where tallying is done. When the result is declared and you have signed the form, the only other forum you have for disputing those results will be a court of law. Let's be clear on this. Let's not prepare the public for chaos.
Ben, we are not new to this.
Makodinga, in the 2013...
I'm going to lose my thought process. In 2007, when results were being cooked, and the former chair, may his soul rest in peace, Samuel Kivuitu, did say that the results are experiencing delays because he believes somebody is cooking them somewhere. That was a statement from a man of the echelons of...
That, yes.
Yeah, he did say that. So, immediately then, before he announced his results, people were taken out of the room, and the entire room was filled with GSU personnel. The same happened in Bomas in 2013. So what he is saying is that you are armed with a document that has been signed by election officials, and you want to go and challenge it at Bomas of Kenya, where Jubilee has littered with GSU personnel. Really, we just have to have a parallel and let
so
it
that
be
you can
in
hold press
tandem.
conference.
The other day,
But Jared, were there any agents, presidential agents, that had an issue in 2013 at Bomas?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yes. And in fact, our agents were actually
they were chased outside the Bomas of Kenya.
So what are you going, if Isn't this recipe for disaster, trying to have a parallel
it is not,
announcement?
No, it is not a recipe for disaster. It is to inform Kenyans. Because last week, when the president was in Kisii, he declared publicly they appointed the Chief Maraga to be the Chief Justice. So sad. If the president can declare they appointed,
but let me tell you what we are going to do.
We need a parallel system that will let Kenya know the truth, because it happened in 2007.
So you are going to let Kenya know the truth.
Let me tell you what we are going to do.
So we have a freedom of information in our constitution. We have freedom of information in the constitution.
That freedom does not extend to you.
Well, Ben, what we are going to do.
It is not about that we are doing something outside the constitution.
Gentlemen.
It exists in our constitution.
Yes, but you have to agree that the law says that there's only one institution that can declare results in this country.
Yes.
And going against that is going against the law. I mean, that's the end of the story.
And that freedom of information is only
what NASA have
in
said,
this respect subjects IBC to give you information.
NASA did not categorically say they will.
But you are addressing their point here.
What NASA said is that they will have a parallel tallying station for Kenyans to know what is happening.
NASA has no responsibility to inform Kenyans on
This is a law-abiding coalition, unlike Jubilee, that uses public resources and public officers in campaigns. What we are saying is that once the results are not in sync with what is being declared by IEBC, we will let the public know, but we know what is to be done, which is going to a court of law. So we will be back at the Supreme Court with our documents armed to ourselves,
evidence.
So that the public knows we have credible evidence. The election has been missed.
Just allow me to make one point so that these two categories, they reduce the emotion. You have the Technical Advisory Committee constituted by IEBC, which has got NASA representatives as well as Jubilee. These pertinent and boiling issues that are giving you rushes must be addressed at IEBC so that you ensure that you've got very solid controls that nobody can be able to manipulate the system. So instead of being worried today that you want to call for a news conference after the elections and make your announcement using your tallying system, make sure that as you get this technology from Saffron, all your fears have been addressed by that system. Because what stops Jubilee, if they lose the election, of making their own announcement and say that NASA stole an election, and the converse? Because nobody wants to shed tears in Kenya because of two political parties after they've lost elections.
What do you think, gentlemen? Let's move this along. Granted, you can have a tallying center. I'm not saying that. I'm saying as the point that you're trying to make. But what do you think this does? Let me start with Jared. What do you think this does in the run-up to the election?
Well,
doesn't it raise emotions?
I'm talking to you as a candidate in the last elections. I did have my own parallel tallying center, which was not in agreement with what IBC was declaring at the sub-county tallying place. And the evidence that I gathered out of what we had is what I presented in court. So it helps, firstly, for a coalition as big as NASA to arm itself. And you have to remember that presidential petitions are timely bound. It is only 2 weeks. And that is why they rejected our 800-page documents that were supporting the petition at the Supreme Court. So what we are saying is that we are going to be smarter this time. We are going to be way ahead of them. We will have all the documentation ready. Even if it will mean filing the following day, we will be ready.
All right.
But we are not saying we are going to announce the result. We understand that is the work of IEBC. IEBC has the constitutional mandate to conduct elections and any referenda.
All right.
So we are law-abiding coalition, unlike Jubilee.
Yes, and just to add to what my colleague have said, in NASA we believe in digital. And in NASA, our tallying center will have a backup system that is digital. But what Jubilee passed in Parliament and whipped their leaders, they passed a manual system. So while they will be banking on backing up their system manually, us will be backing up our system digitally so that we can confront them in the case of...
In fact, I suspect that around 10th, when we have the results, around 10th of August, from then, NASA, whatever they morph into, after that will be taking us back to purely manual. Yeah, they will say Jubilee rigged this thing, they hacked the thing.
Is that what you're planning?
The truth is, there is no one in NASA who has a track record of believing in electoral institutions and the outcomes of those institutions. Now, they are saying, what Jared, which is a fairly reasonable argument, is that they will have all those forms, they'll collect all the documents. The law requires IBC to give them those documents at the point of generation. Yeah? The law allows it. The Form 35, the presidential declaration that comes from the counties, is supposed to be signed by their chief agent at Bomas. Yeah? Part of the problem in COD in 2013 is that the agent refused to sign the documents. He refused to sign those forms. And therefore, he refused to sign them and refused to take them. By the time COD was preparing for a petition, they had nothing. They had no information that the election had been rigged. They declared they were going to court without any information. Then, of course, you know the circus. It took them a couple of days. They had to sue IBC to give them the information. Information they should have had to begin with. Because at the polling station, there's a Form 34 that every agent should have a copy of, and which copy is actually left at the polling station, should be pinned at the polling station. We have no problem them collecting documents. Yeah? Obviously, it means that they have already accepted that we are going to win this thing in the first round, and there will be a need for them to go to court. We have no problem. If they have accepted that, as we are running our race, we know we will win this thing first round, 50% plus one will go 10. Let them go to court. We have an independent judiciary, independent Supreme Court.
Independent judiciary with Justice Maraga.
And independent Supreme Court. Let them go there and argue their case. If they make it through...
Ben, let me enlighten the public on one thing. If upon carrying out an election, the agent is not in agreement with what has been indicated as final result, they can refuse to sign.
And give reasons why.
But again, yes, the presiding officer ought to comment the reasons why that particular agent did not sign.
Yes.
So sometimes, and many a times, Jubilee has this tendency of bribing everybody, including those presiding officers, who would then refuse to put those comments.
When did Jubilee bribe presiding officers?
Well, that is why you are in office.
In fact, the Jubilee party is going to the election for the first time this time.
Right.
The Jubilee coalition went to an election. Which proof is this? Which court of law? You know the law.
Can you allow me to make
let's
the
cool
last
this
point?
down a bit, Dismas, by talking to one of our, we're getting some calls into studio, into a very heated debate here. Latif is calling us from right here in Nairobi. Latif, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Ben.
Good. What is your take on the IEBC's preparedness for the elections and what we are discussing here this morning?
Yeah, I'm happy to hear exactly what you are discussing. The discussion is quite fine. Hello?
Yes. Go ahead. What is, with your contribution?
Yes. My real worry is that what happens. What's wrong? What is really wrong when say that they'll conduct a parallel tallying system? Because if you are told that the election is free and fair,
yes,
and even the government is confirming that.
Okay.
And I believe that at the polling stations, it is the returning officers or whoever is announcing the results. It's a representative from the IEBC. So if the opposition are taking results from the polling stations and they put them in their tallying system, I don't see anything wrong with that, because like we saw in 2007 and even 2013, that you find that the elections that results that were announced in polling stations, and when they found their way at the ball, the results multiplied.
All right.
And now we are being told that IEBC, as the sole authority now, is the only body allowed to announce the final result.
What do you think you're being told?
Just a minute, Mr.
What do you
Ben.
think you're being told? Isn't that
Just a minute,
the
Mr.
law?
Ben. Let me just finish.
All right.
Now we are being told that the IBC is the only body who is allowed, and which is okay by law, to announce the results. What if the results are cooked? Shall we just allow those results like that? I mean, don't you think just a recipe for chaos, Mr. Ben?
Yes, but
this is not correct.
If you have allegations that results are cooked, the law has a process of how you go about that.
Yes, I agree with you. That is very true. But now, I've even heard that when the president was in Kisii, he said that Maraga, they gave Maraga the mandate to be the CJ. Don't you think that Maraga, if the Maraga is their man, and you go to the court, don't you think that the whole issue will be treated like it was treated in 2013?
All right.
Don't you see that there's an issue in this?
All right. Thank you, Latif. Very, very pertinent issues you're raising. And we have to address this issue of Maraga. It keeps being... But let me talk to Andrew first, very quickly. Andrew, calling us from Kisumu. Andrew, good morning.
Good morning, sir. How are you, Mr. Ben?
Fine, thank you, sir.
Yes, I'm calling from Kisumu.
Yes?
And what I want to say is that some of us should not joke around with issues to do with election.
Okay.
Based on what actually we experienced in the year 2007, I was actually in this is one thing that I believe politicians should actually go ahead and handle with a lot of caution. What court guys are saying that they are going to actually come up with a parallel way of how they can actually look at the results is not bad, but what we want to tell them is that let them allow the IEBC to do their work, but let the IEBC again not joke with this issue.
All right.
To do with the election.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. Andrew, they are calling us from Kisumu. Let's talk about this Maraga issue.
Yeah. Well, Ben,
what do
the
you
Judicial Service Commission advertises for jobs. And they did advertise for the position of Chief Justice upon the retirement of former judge, what was his name? Mutunga. So Maraga was one of the people who applied and were invited for interviews, including those who were denied the interview by JSC, were later on recalled, courtesy of a court order, to appear before the JSC to have their interviews be carried out. And Maraga emerged the winner amongst many who participated in that exercise. And then the law is very clear that one name is to be presented to the president by JSC to be appointed by the president. So the entire exercise is carried out by an independent body called JSC. The president's work is simply to put his signature of authority, giving this person the job. Not because that was his candidate, because he didn't even participate in the interviewing process. So what I'm saying is the president did not participate at all in appointment of Justice Maraga. So I know he's using it for political expedience.
So he's most
what
likely
Maraga
using it for
should do
political
and what
expediency.
JSC must do, because this now touches on a very treacherous ground. They have to come out clearly and put the record straight that the president participated absolutely or carried out absolutely no role in his appointment.
All right. But you keep using it, saying that it's in the president.
The perception the president for using Maraga in Kisii, it was misleading to Kenyans.
All right.
Because the president was initiating that he is the one who appointed for the sake of political gains for Jubilee that he has appointed.
Is that
Kisii
a political
graph? So what I want to
just a minute.
There's nothing wrong with the president claiming that his administration, that Jubilee, in fact, did give Maraga a job. The part that Jared left in this entire process,
it's a lie in itself, isn't it?
In this entire process, the very vital part that Jared left out was the fact that a candidate submitted by a JSC must be vetted by Parliament, and Parliament can reject that candidate. Yeah, we all know that Jubilee holds majority in the National Assembly that did the vetting. And the Jubilee coalition then, agreed with the recommendation
of the JSC. Did CORD object?
Yeah.
Did CORD object?
Neither did CORD object.
Oh, yeah.
But,
then we have
but Parliament, a Jubilee-controlled National Assembly, vetted and gave an okay for Maraga to be appointed. So the president, as head of the party, as a responsibility, can in fact claim that Jubilee gave Maraga the job. Now, is JSC independent? We all know JSC is independent. I mean, it has representation from all the sides. Yeah, we have believed in it. When Maraga was appointed, no one in this country rejected his nomination for appointment on the basis that he comes from Kisii or on the basis that Jubilee were happy with it.
All right, let's speak from
these things called bringing are just splitting hairs.
A man who comes from Kisii.
Maraga's brother.
Do you think Jubilee has a right to beat their own drum, say they give Jubilee, gave
your brother
Nyamira,
job?
Kisii Chief Justice?
Well, I'm a Kenyan of Kisii origin. It's important to clarify that.
However,
we keep on reminding the president in this show, times above number, that every single word which comes from his mouth it's probably more powerful than the Constitution of the Republic of Kenya. So in as much as Dr. Makodingo is trying to defend his boss, that you have a tyranny of numbers in the National Assembly, the moment he said that we have given a Kisii man a job, the normal interpretation of any Kenyan is that Maraga is a puppet, number one. Number two, it appears to any Kenyan you speak now in the street that the president has got the ability to influence the functioning of the Judicial Service Commission. So that right from the time people made the applications, the president or his team were able to manipulate so that they had a predicted outcome. And right now, I pity the NASA guys, because if the NASA guys lose this election, they'll be running to the Supreme Court, chaired by somebody who's been acknowledged in public as having been appointed by one of the parties in that matter. So I think NASA would be in a very difficult spot. Now, be that as it may, the chairman of the Judicial Service Commission, again, who happens to be Justice Maraga, must now issue a statement and disassociate himself from the statement made by the president in Kisii. Because if he doesn't do that, then he'll be telling all Kenyans that I'm in agreement, I'm a puppet, I was appointed by President Kenyatta, and the Supreme Court can never, ever be a fair arbiter in any electoral disputes. Right. And I really think that's unacceptable.
Those are views from Kisii. They're the final views. All right, let's switch gears. Let's switch gears now and leave it at that in terms of the IEBCs. Of course, it is a conversation that needs to continue about the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission's preparedness for the election. We shall continue to analyze the issues for you here on KTN News. Let's talk about some politics, more politics now in terms of the political parties. The political party primaries are coming up this coming month. Some parties have announced the dates that will be carrying out the nominations. Others are still deliberating on that. But how are they preparing? 34 days to the elections on the 8th of August. Now, let's start with what happened on Thursday. Let's start with the National Super Alliance, the opposition. And one of the things that they have been talking about, and their detractors, especially Jubilee, have been trying to call them out on, is the issue of who is going to be their presidential flag bearer. An issue they are yet to sort. Sources have been telling us here at KTN News that they are 80% done with this small matter of deciding who their presidential candidate will be. And there have been talks of disunity. Wiper leader Kalonzo Musyoka, questions asked about him, rumors saying that he was trying to bolt out of the NASA coalition. But on Thursday in Mathare, all four principals in NASA did seek to assure their supporters that they are indeed very united.
Mimi najua Kalonzo. Mwaka ile ingine tulisimama na yeye. Tulifanya kampeni na yeye. Kalonzo Musyoka ni mwanaume.
Hesabu imekuwa nyingi zaidi. Na ndio naona hawa wanaanza kutetemeka, kupeana porojo, watashinda. Na leo nimekuja kutangaza hapa.
Hema ya NASA ni kubwa. Inatutosha sisi wote. Na hata joto ikiwa kwa hiyo hema, sisi tutabaki ndani hapo ndani.
Tumepitia katika kila majaribio. Raila alinyimwa penshoni yake. Kalonzo akanyimwa penshoni yake. Weta akafukuzwa, akaenda akawachapa, akarudi. Mudavadi ametujoin. Sasa tumekula ng'ombe mzima, mkia utatushinda.
The National Super Alliance will be holding their rally later today at the Tononoka grounds in Mombasa, speaking about the fact that they are indeed united. Dismas, is this now becoming a bit uncomfortable for them, the fact that they haven't said or decided who their flag bearer will be? No. They have to keep issuing statements and putting out small fires about that.
What I realize when you look at the NASA principles, I think they've taken a decision that there's going to be information blackout on who is going to be the flag bearer. And when you look at the IBC calendar, they actually have about another 8 weeks for them to decide on who is going to run.
And then 10th of May.
The situation obtaining is Jubilee is getting nervous by the day. They'd like to know who is going to be running from NASA so that they can prepare their propaganda arsenal. Because right now, if they want to do, they don't know whether it's Raila, whether it's Kalonzo, Wetangula. So they don't know who to start hitting below the belt. So they're becoming nervous. And also the media, because 50% of Kenyans buy newspapers or watch TV or listen to radio because they're expecting an announcement. And when that doesn't come, there's a lot of pressure. But the person really who is more worried more than anybody else, it's actually Jubilee. Because Jubilee, as soon as they get to know whether it's Wetangula, Kalonzo, Musalia, then they'll set their entire propaganda system on them. And that's the reason why they're worried. But when you look at the four principles, in as much as they're together, it's not because they love each other and wherever they're in a room, they're passing red roses. All of them, they don't like each other. And they're trying to manage those egos. So that's why you see Raila Odinga claiming that he knows Kalonzo very well. Obviously, he doesn't know Kalonzo very well. Kalonzo can decide to bolt anytime. But Kalonzo knows that if he decides to bolt from NASA, he's going to be walking all alone. And he's been told times above number by members of his community that right now we're in NASA. If you're going to take a walk, you're going to walk alone. And even Raila Odinga has been told the same. Because the iron grip he has had over ODM, even some governors within ODM are beginning to tell him, wait a minute, we're in NASA to stay. In the event that you're not the presidential candidate, you cannot walk away. So all of them are stuck. They're very united in that. And if our Jubilee, I'll keep on fanning the fires and telling everybody that these guys are not able to come up with a name. And you see the deputy president has been doing it very well. Because he says, wanaume wane, wamekaa miaka 4, wameshindwa kuchagua mmoja wao, na tena wametengeneza kamiti ya watu 12. Meaning that he's under pressure because right now they're shooting in the dark.
Do you think it's a good thing for you as NASA that you haven't, put your cards out there?
And what we are doing, I think it's a very good strategy because what the government wants from the Jubilee side, they want us to reveal our candidate. But if you remember in 2002, Kibaki was revealed 2 months to the general election. So our strategy we are using is that to keep them guessing because they don't have agenda. Particularly the deputy president, when he goes to all rallies, is talking about 4 principles. So the agenda of the deputy president is the 4 principles of NASA. So we want to keep the deputy president busy as he goes around the country talking about NASA principles, but it is our secret card. But we can assure the people we are coming with a candidate very soon. Jared, all of us, we are in it.
Jared, Gabriel talks about a secret card. Is it a strategy or is it an impasse?
Based from history, and he has alluded to part of it, in 2002, when NAC came together 2 months to the general election, and they won against a tyrannical rule that had been in establishment for 24 years. Uhuru Kenyatta is now the current president. After the Mademoni saga, was declared the candidate barely 3 months to the elections, and he won. I don't know why somebody is pushing us 4 months to the election to mention our flag bearer. But suffice to say, NASA does not operate on Jubilee's calendar, and neither can they have powers to control us on who and when to declare our flag bearer. One thing is for certain, that we shall have 1 presidential candidate and 1 deputy out of the 4. Now, Ruto goes around to say that we've been together 4 years and we've never been able to identify a candidate. Of course, we've never been together for 4 years. Mudavadi just joined us the other day. So it makes political sense for him, but that does not really, trigger us to move according to what they want.
Away from external factors, Jared, away from what Jubilee are trying to push you to say as NASA and all that, inside NASA, isn't there really a problem that needs to be sorted out? I mean, it's not, you don't, let's be honest, you don't have a candidate and you're just sitting and waiting to, you still don't have a candidate,
Well, we know that we do not have a candidate as yet. When Gambia was going into its elections, actually 2 months ago, the opposition came together 1 month and they defeated Yahya Jammeh, who had been there forever, 22 years. So we know what we are doing. We will unveil our presidential candidate, and not just the presidential candidate. Remember, we've also not unveiled our manifesto. So they're not asking us about our manifesto, which is most important to the Kenyan people than who then becomes the flag bearer. And they're very particular on this, knowing that our manifesto is going to be earth-shaking and scorched earth. that will, shake them all through. So I think they should be asking us more about our manifesto than just individuals.
Right,
because
let's
NASA's coalition is not about an individual.
Right.
It's about the coalition of every Kenyan who is now burdened by the yoke of Jubilee.
What
and
about
its ineptitude to run government affairs.
All right, fair enough.
What these two are claiming NASA is doing, of course, it's not a strategy. First of all, to begin, there's no strategy there. They just don't have a candidate. They can't agree. They are worried sick every morning. They wake up that should one of them be chosen, someone else will bolt out. Jubilee has no interest. Jubilee has no interest in who becomes the NASA candidate for a simple reason.
Keep on talking about
for a simple reason that all of them combined, still got less votes. In fact, way less. If you took Mudavadi's votes and Raila and Kalonzo's votes, of course, Wetangula has no votes.
And if
you combined all those together, there were still way less, nearly 200, 300,000 less votes than what Uhuru got to give him 50% plus one. So in whatever formation, even if Wetangula is their candidate, it doesn't suddenly spring up with votes out of nowhere. So we have no interest.
That makes sense at a glance. But would you say that things are as they were in 2013?
In fact, do
you have the same
we have voter, but the election is numbers. Voters were registered in 2013. We have added an approximately 4.5 million more voters in this election. We know where those voters have come from. We know what ideological leanings they have or whatever persuasions take them to the polling stations. Those numbers were coalition neutral, so to speak. Nobody really added more votes than the other. So they're coalition neutral. We still have our 50% plus one. We don't care who the NASA candidate is. In fact, we suspect that the moment they get a candidate, the only reason I will be interested is that the moment they get a candidate, they start losing votes. Because they'll start, people who are supporting Mudavadi will start losing.
My friend is conveniently forgetting that there are several counties that are not under their ambit at the moment. There is Narok, there is Kajiado, there is Elgeyo, there is Samburu, there is Turkana, there was in Gishu, and many other places.
I like this NASA thinking. I like this NASA thinking.
Right.
Which was the previous code thinking. So, where you go beating drums, you go looking for votes.
What you are not understanding is very simple. The dynamics has changed from what was there in 2013 to 2017.
That is what you want to believe. Go ahead believing it.
We have tested in Jubilee. And from the recent register that we have of 19-point-something million voters, it is obvious for anybody who went to school.
It's obvious for whom?
For anybody who went to school.
All right, so that I don't also lose my train of thought. And it's very important.
Anybody who went to school, Ben, will tell you we have the numbers.
Is saying that we know we have the numbers and nothing has changed. The votes of the four are still less than NASA, Jubilee rather. But a question to you, Dismas. Also, the moment NASA announced the presidential flag bearer, depending on who it is, will that have an impact on the numbers that come out to vote for Jubilee? Like in Jubilee support base, is there some candidates that people would be like, okay, we're not going, we don't need to go and vote, and that would be detrimental for Jubilee?
Absolutely. When you look at, Makodingo is part of the Jubilee strategy team, but right now he's behaving as if he's an outsider, missing out on key information, and he thinks that the NASA guys will pick some information. Like, for instance, you have a scenario where we describe it as Raila phobia, that is based in Mount Kenya. I've got that irrational fear for Raila Odinga. If you are to have Kalonzo or Wetangula or Musalia Mudavadi as the presidential candidate, the people in central Kenya, who for some reason have been conditioned by the Mount Kenya elite to fear Raila Odinga, will have no issue with the same Musalia Mudavadi. Even the governor that you spoke earlier on, Governor Ruto, will have no issue supporting Musalia Mudavadi. Even Gideon Moi will have no issue supporting Musalia Mudavadi. But Governor Ruto and Gideon Moi will have an issue supporting NASA if Raila is a presidential candidate. But on the flip side, Raila has been able to create an irrational following, and right now he's telling them that this time around I'm not coming back to complaining that my cows have been stolen. So they're saying, let's give him a last chance. Obviously, the presidential candidate of NASA will have a huge bearing, even from the international community. I know so many donors, people are willing to write checks, but they're just waiting to know who is the flag bearer. The only person who doesn't stand a chance, obviously, is Moses Wetangula. But for Kalonzo, for Musalia, and for Raila, it's going to have a huge bearing. And then number two, Odinga knows very well that when the Supreme Court said they won the elections last time, but since then, we did not have NYS, we did not have Eurobond, we did not have 7,000 amorphous kilometers of roads which have been done. Then the cost of ugali was much cheaper than chapati. Now the converse is the case. The inflation has gone haywire, and what we were discussing earlier on of national inclusivity. Jubilee government, without any effort, has managed to bastardize that chapter 10, which calls for national value. They've also managed to score an A in chapter 6 of integrity because they've allowed every Tom, Dick, and Harry to run, with the public resources. So those dynamics have changed, and people are beginning to say, wait a minute, should I just vote for President Kenyatta because I come from Kiambu, or should I be looking at my bank balance? And you notice the NASA people are coming up with a strategy called Family and Friends, telling people that, wait a minute, you don't need to vote for Raila Odinga because he's a low man, and on the same case, you don't need to vote for President Kenyatta because he's a Kikuyu man. Look at your selfish interest. And you saw the show we had there a few weeks ago where a candidate from Meru indicated that even the Meru have given Jubilee a warning shot. They're saying right now it's a 50-50. So the dynamics have changed so much that it's too close to call. Right. We're not going to know who is going to win till the fat woman dances.
All right. Let me come back to Washington. Which candidate among the four are you most worried about? And whichever degree of worry.
Neither, actually. None of them. That's an obvious answer. None of them. Okay. If I was to look at this thing externally and look at all the four, and objectively, and look at the four core candidates, if you asked me, yeah, of all of them, the person who is more likely to energize the code base, the code or NASA base, will be Raila Odinga, because he has qualities that none of those people individually can claim. Yeah, there is some fire he brings. There is a claim of credibility. Yeah, false as it may be, that he has built around the country. That is a crusader for certain. That is a crusader for social justice, for a lot of these things. Yeah, it falls because we know his track record as Prime Minister does not reflect those things. However, the moment you remove him as a candidate and put Kalonzo, NASA can no longer go around talking about anti-corruption. I championed devolution. It was watermelon. I mean, everybody knows this. Yeah, he championed for devolution. Musalia Mudavadi cannot suddenly come up and say he's anti-corruption when under his watch, they even stole a cemetery. Yeah? So there are certain things that only Raila can champion. In my opinion, the moment you take those out, the moment he's not candidate, you lose a significant number, not because they'll vote for Jubilee, but because they'll just not have the energy to go out and vote.
Jared, do you take his advice?
I have a different
opinion. Of course, we will never seek any advice from Jubilee.
And even it's a very good advice.
No way. But anyway, what is coming out clearly is that the NASA principles have come together because they are bound by ideologies. Yes. They have ideological similarities, which is fundamentally to improve the lives of the ordinary citizen, those who've been impoverished by corruption that has taken a huge toll on Jubilee's government. So that is the most important thing. Then you come back to who then controls the next government. All the four of them are going to play a significant role. What I ought to have not said, but I have to say, is that we are coming up with a summit similar kind of a thing that ought to have run this government in 2002 when Kibaki won, but was killed. So out of those four, and we are still reaching out to many other people, Narok governor has already alluded that he's coming this way. So there will be a huge summit representing various interests, including religious, civil society, and many others, that will then be in charge of running the affairs of this country. Not a one-man guitar, not a two-man guitar, as Jubilee is perpetuating at the moment.
All right. He says Raila is the most, has the most to offer. What do you think about it?
On one, I share different views, and what the Jubilee are using, they are using the message of fear to the voters in Central Province to whip them out to come and vote. So that is why all the Jubilee strongmen like Odinga here, when they talk of Raila, they talk of him with passion. Of course, Raila has that possibility and has that guts of taking that particular position. but they are using Raila to create fear among the central voters to whip them to come and vote. Because they are
But he has said positive things about Raila.
He has said positive things. He has talked about Viga. I'm supporting that. But when they are campaigning, when all the Jubilee lieutenants are in central Kenya, they are inserting fear among the voters that if it is Raila, we have to come out all. We even remove someone from the mortuary, even if the dead will be brought out to come and vote from the cemetery if it is Raila.
Ben, we must not allow this
but
to continue.
But I want to correct this. Raila is equal to the task. He has been tested. He is proven. If given the opportunity,
and we have defeated
he will do much more. He has not been defeated. He has been stolen.
Okay, he wants to correct.
These people keep making these claims. Yeah. First of all, I think what Jared has said is ridiculous. A country cannot be managed by a summit of CG religious leaders and CG civil society and CG what. They purport to support the constitution, and yet conveniently get out of it to create extra constitutional institutions whenever it favors them. Like this so-called summit that will be, that is what, in your words, you said, that will be managing the country. Yeah. The truth is, the people of Kenya on 8th of August will be electing a president and a deputy president who they expect to appoint a cabinet that will be vetted through institutional mechanisms that will then be responsible for running the country. Now, the constitution goes ahead and says that that cabinet should reflect the face of Kenya, and as much to the extent that is possible given the limited number of slots we have.
All right.
That is what we will do.
When the travesty is perpetuation of this exclusion that these people have perfected. And he's repeating it.
You can't manage a country by committee.
You are not going to have a government that is all-inclusive. He's only saying that you need two tribes, put them in government, and let the country move on.
How are you going to allow this? How are you going to allow Jared to take what that I didn't say and let them pass?
He's saying that summit, where is it in the constitution?
Yes.
Ben,
what is this summit? This thing?
Right. I think I've got the responsibility to clear these myths created by these two organizations. The summit of NASA has been created, and it's the membership of people, the various political party leaders. So the 4 political party leaders are members of that summit. And in the event that they form the next government, all of them have been given 2 slots to the cabinet, and the rest slots are going to be filled depending on your contribution. So it's important to address that. Number 2, there's no ideological unity among those 4 principles. So you cannot say that Kalonzo, Raila, Musalia have got some ideologies that they've been brought together because of some ideology. How come that ideology comes into place every 5 years? And then I think it's wrong for Makodingo to accuse one of those principles, Musalia Mudavadi, as having participated in some cemetery thing. I think that's a character assassination.
Well, Ben,
no, but
Ben,
this is
it's my Bible, a book where I derive a lot of my research.
Yes, he was in charge.
Anyway,
it is a public record.
We have 5 minutes. We have 5 minutes only, and I want us to talk about how do you think your parties, the parties around, are prepared for the nominations. Just very quickly, let me start with you, Jared. How is your preparedness, or what do you think is the preparedness of parties?
A quick one before I get to my preparedness.
Very quick.
Well, the Bible, where I derive my discipline, tells us that 2 people cannot start to walk without agreeing on anything. So we have already agreed on ideologies that we share in NASA. That is why we are moving together. So we have ideologies. Secondly, most importantly, we have already set out dates for carrying out ODM nominations. The only party that has come up with a timeline and a timetable in respect of what IEBC has given out. So we are starting on the 7th and ending on the 26th. And what we are doing is we are not doing the nominations on a single day in the entire nation. That creates a lot of discord.
Right.
So it will be 2 or 3 counties per day, and the following day there is a break just to also, in-house issues, so that we move on until the 26th.
Right. How different will this be in terms of being a free and fair contest?
We tend to believe that that will then offer us an ample opportunity to address issues that are emerging, constantly emerging on nominations.
Right. And if you're running for Nairobi Senate on ODM ticket,
yes,
what do you expect
declared
on nominations?
For nomination, well, the plan we had a meeting at Orange House with our National Election Board Chairman, Honorable Pareno, and we came up with a strategy that the Election Board has appointed has appointed people who will be in charge of the county returning officers. They have gone down to sub-county returning officers and to the ward returning officers. And those people are not disclosed. They are not disclosed to the aspirant. So, and during the last day, the National Election Board will swap all of them. So we are not sure of who will be in Nairobi or where will be taken. And we are, if I try to compare with the wars we are seeing in the news, in the Bomas of Kenya, Jubilee were fighting because of National Election Board, a clear indication they are in a panic mood. So the days are catching up. Yesterday they were fighting in Murang'a. The other day they were fighting in Nakuru. And I can assure you, today or tomorrow, they will be fighting somewhere else. So, Makodinga, are you producing aspirants or war veterans?
All right. Makodingo, as you answer that, you haven't given out your timetable. This should be happening in the next few days.
No, first of all, I think these NASA people tend to think that Jubilee is like them, that our constitution is like theirs. It is not. In our constitution, we have county elections boards, the formation of which is a consultative process between all the aspirants, which is why we are constituting them after our nominations, our aspirants have submitted their nominations, so that then we know who is actually going to participate in this election. We do not want a scenario where a returning officer is imposed on an electorate in a county, and then there will be accusations and counter-accusations about who bought the electoral officials. What we want is that the candidates themselves, among themselves, recommend, because this nonsense of getting an independent person who then is a party member doesn't make sense. The moment you're a party member, you are already politically involved. So we are saying, give aspirants an opportunity at the county level, to set up a county elections board that they all agree on, so that then we do not bring these accusations it was compromised, this was somebody's candidate. What you are seeing is passion. That is not, we are not fighting. That is passion for the party. You can see that Jubilee Party is loved, that the people want to participate in the exercises.
This must be your final thoughts. Nominations in this country have been shambolic. Any evidence so far to say that things will be different this year?
No way. Ben, the passion Makodingo is talking about is what you used to see at ODM areas. So it looks like the men in black have finally landed at Jubilee. There's nowhere you'll have players electing a referee for their soccer match. We spoke about Arsenal and Man United. You cannot have the players electing a referee. But the sad thing is that it's unfortunate in Kenya, there's not a single political party that has got the capacity to do free and fair party primaries. So what you're going to be doing, the party leaders are going to nominate people like they've done for Jubilee in Nairobi, and others will steal their way.
All right.
Well, then allow me to say that I'm taking a break for 3 weeks to go and campaign.
Oh, yes. All the best as you look for that Nyando seat.
Nyando parliamentary seat.
No, we really have to go.
And you want to campaign?
Just to tell them.
We can't go here. Dismas Mokua, political analyst, Washington Makodingo, Jubilee strategist, senatorial aspirant for Nairobi on an ODM ticket, Gabriel Bukachi, also known as Chapia, and also we have NASA strategist and aspirant for Nyando constituency parliamentary seats, that is Jared Okello. Thank you so much, gentlemen. It was a wonderful show. That's why we leave it this week. Be sure to join us every Sunday morning from 10 a.m. to 12 noon. Let's leave you with Siasa Files. See you next time.
Chapia.